There comes a time when you have to actually start making your game. It's easy to say, just get started, but I wanted to go over some basic ways you can get onto the ramp of making games, rather than simply asserting it and figuring people will figure it out on their own. You might want to do this even if you already have a big idea of what it is you want to make. Consider this a freebie micro lesson. Before you try to make something big, try to make something small. The smaller thing will teach you things that you need to know for making the big thing that you didn't know that you didn't know. Don't be like me. Don't try and make a 120 card deck builder as your literal first ever print-on-demand game. It's best, if you have an idea of what you want to make, to instead start with something a lot smaller and see if you can make a game out of that. See if it engages you the way you want your bigger project to do. See if you can grasp why players do the things they do. That is the essence of making a game, and everything else is bookkeeping and connecting to that. Presented here, then, are some basic strategies for starting out. Number 1, modding. Modding is kind of a dirty term in board and card games. We are fickle beasts about this stuff. Changing the rules of an existing game is often seen as a horrible behavior, though sometimes we can get away with it. Players have this bad habit of viewing a rulebook as if it is capable of telling them things rather than giving them things that they need to work out themselves. Still, you can do it. There are house rules for Monopoly, and people make up their own Magic the Gathering formats as well. Modding is easy when you do it to nudge the rules a little, but writing down formalized rules for a mod can be a real challenge. Take an existing game and try to write out just one page of short, alternative rules for that game and see what you get. You might really improve it. Tent posts. Rainer Knizia, a super prolific banker madman that he is, has forwarded the idea that you start game design from one of 3 basic tent posts. You either have a theme, which is an idea of how a game is meant to make you feel, the kind of story it wants to tell, what it wants to be about. A component, so a physical game element like cards or markers or coins or tokens or some piece of art you want to base your game experience off, or famously a Lego shark. Or a mechanic, like you've seen the way some things interact and you want to try and make a game that uses that interaction in a repeatable way. This idea is pretty simple. You start from one of those 3 positions and then you fill in the other 2 things that fit it. If you have a theme of, say, accountants, you want mechanics that feel accountanty. You might have a mechanic that's really good for moving objects back and forth between spaces, and you could use that to make a pirate game. You might find that you've got access to really nice hard poker tokens that you can print on, and you might wind up making something like Mafia de Cuba. Sit down and work out which of these 3 points you have an idea for and work towards it. Number 3, spite. This is a bit like modding, but it's also a bit not. Lots of game designers come at games thinking they know better than someone else, and honestly, if you do, you should give it a shot to mock up your superior game. I know I make fun of people who think that they in their basement are going to make the next Magic the Gathering as if they can just get rid of one thing about that game they don't like and therefore be hailed as a genius, but if you find yourself driven to take an existing game and remake it to fix some element of it you don't like, that's a perfectly reasonable place to start, and you can use the existing game's mechanisms and style to give yourself a feel for what you're going to need to make your own version. Just remember, along the way you're going to encounter a lot of things that teach you why that game was the way it was. Maybe it's not as simple as you think. In the end, there are only 3 difficult parts of making a game. Starting to make it, developing it once you started, and knowing when to finish it. This is just one step, but it's one you'll have to do, and it's okay if it never goes anywhere.